Okay, here we are, Tuesday's lecture, and today's lecture has no PowerPoint slides. Um, today's lecture is just about Program 7 and some of the tools and techniques and stuff that you'll need to use in Program 7. So Program 7 is essentially a simulation of a single express lane at a store, grocery store, whatever you want to think about it as. It's going to have a queue class because lines at a grocery store are queues. And it's going to have app data. And the app data is data about a shopper. And there's going to be some funky things that we have to do in order to get app data to work right. I'm going to write all of the code for app data just sitting at the terminal. I've thought about this. I've tested a couple of things, but this again is that creative process when you're writing code where you try some things and maybe everything works, maybe everything doesn't work, but we're going to work through it and we're going to see how to build this app data, this shopper data, and make that the data for our program. So I'm going to share you out a terminal window right here. Okay. I've got a little bit of test code in here. I'm going to remove the executable. So this is just on my laptop. The test code was one thing that I wanted to make sure of before I started developing the app data structure. Okay. So here's app data. We're going to include IO stream. Okay. In the specification, that's probably all we need. Using namespace standard, if, whoops. So a preprocessor, if not def shopper, then we're going to define shopper and then the end if. So this is back to our little trick to make sure that the .h file doesn't get included multiple times and doesn't overwrite itself. If you have not looked at the Program 7 write-up, you should pause the lecture right now, go open up that Word doc from Moodle and have it open so that you can see what I'm doing and how it relates to that assignment write-up. Okay, so I'm going to need a const int max name length, and that's no more than 18 characters. I'm also going to need a const int max items, which is 21. Okay. And now I'm going to start with the class keyword, and we're going to define a shopper class. Okay. I got to get rid of that Vim auto indenting, so no C indent. Okay. There's the end of my class definition, and then I'm going to use that trick I used a couple of times ago. Type def shopper app data. Okay, so I'm making sure the shopper has the name app data. Back up here, we're going to have a public area. We're going to have a private. Yes, I see the misspelling. Private area. And we're going to start with our private data. And I am, let's close that. Let's bring up the Zoom meeting, return to the meeting, do a new share. Okay, so here's the write-up of the program. And so this is what I'm putting into my class, okay? So I'm gonna stop that share. I'm gonna go back to the file. And right up here, I'm gonna start, whoops. No, I wanted that in private. So right here in the private, I'm gonna start defining those things. So shopper name, that's a character array. I'm gonna call it last name, and that's gonna be max name length +1, okay, right? What else do I need in here? I need whether or not they're a valued shopper, so that's a bool. I need the number of items in the cart. And then I need the contents of the cart. And that's going to be array of size max items. So name, valued shopper, number of items, and the array that contains the numbers of the items. So that all works, okay? Up here, I need my constructor. I need my destructor. Let's see. I need my copy constructor. So remember, a copy constructor has a parameter that is of type class, and we pass in a reference to the original. I'm going to have a const. So there's the assignment operator overload. The assignment operator overload is going to return a constant reference to a object, a shopper object. And then it's going to also take a const shopper object reference, and we're going to call that right-hand side, but I'm not going to spell that out like I did last time. I'm just going to call it RHS. Okay. So I'm checking the syntax on that. That looks good. And then I need a friend of an OStream. Okay. Reference. And that's an operator overload for the stream insertion operator. It's going to take an OStream reference called out for our first parameter. And then the second parameter is going to be a const shopper reference that I'm going to call object. Okay. I'm also going to overload the in-stream or the stream insertion operator. And so that's going to be an iStream operator, stream extraction operation. Did I say stream insertion? I meant stream extraction. That's going to have its first parameter is an iStream that I'm just going to call in. And it also is going to have a const shopper reference object. Now, I'm not sure about all of that syntactical stuff, especially this const right in here. Okay, so we need to be careful here. Okay. When I get to writing some code to test the setup of this class, I'm going to want to test that stream extraction operator very carefully. Okay. And now we just have getters and setters. So I am I'm looking at a couple of notes from that test program that I wrote earlier that you could see in the directory that I started in. So this one's a little weird. The setter, we're going to make all the setters void for right now. Set last name. Set last name. If I only typed what I actually said, and that's going to have a char name that gets passed in. Okay. Void set valued. Shopper. And that takes a bool, so it either takes a true or false called valued. And then a void set cart. And so this is a little weird because I'm going to use this mutator, this setter, to set both the number of items and those items numbers that are stored in the integer array. So every item has a number between 10,000 and 99,999. And so I need num items, and I need an integer array like that. And so that's going to be the setter for two different values. It's going to be the setter for num items. And in fact, I need to change the name of that parameter because that's the same as the private data in the class. So I'm just going to call it num. And then an integer array called contents. Okay. And then for each one of those, I need a getter as well. And so the getter for a string is really pretty weird. The getter for any array is really pretty weird. It's going to be a const char pointer get name, get last name. I should call that get last name. Okay. And it's not going to have any parameters. Bool get valued shopper, misspelled valued, need that as a D. Okay, that's just going to return us whether they're a valued shopper or not. I need an int get num items. So this one has a separate getter. And then again, const int star get cart, like that. Okay. And I think that's it. I think that's everything I needed. Okay. That all looks good. So I'm going to get out of here. Okay. Now I'm going to go to appdata.cpp. I'm going to include IOStream. I'm going to include the CString library because I want string copy and things like that. Possibly. Okay. I'm also going to include the local include file appdata.h, which we just created. I'm going to throw in a using namespace standard. And now comes each of our member functions. So in the class shopper, or in the class shopper's scope, we have a constructor called shopper with only 2 P's, not 3 P's. Okay. And we actually have something to do here. Okay. In fact, we've got a lot of setup to do here. I'm going to do a string copy into last name. I'm going to copy in the empty string, and I'm going to use max name length to limit how much we're copying in. Okay. I'm going to set valued shopper equal to false. I'm going to set num items equal to 0. And I'm going to set cart equal to, and I'm going to use the curly brace initializer, and I'm going to set them to zeros. 5 zeros, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19, 20, 21. Okay. And so now cart is has all of its item numbers set to 0. And that's about it. That's all we need for the constructor. The destructor, which is in the class shopper scope, tilde shopper, we have no dynamically allocated memory, so we can just do nothing. The destructor doesn't do anything. Okay. Now I've got that operator overload. right? So do you remember how the operator overload worked for the assignment operator? Remember, we did this a couple of days ago, right? So I'm going to get out of here for now. And I am going to go, let's see, that was, where was that? That looks, I think it was in lecture 7. That is not where it was. Not for sure that's where that was. Let's try that again. Oh, that's what I'm doing wrong. I got to go up a directory, then go into lecture 7 slash app data.cpp. Okay, so there's that that overload right there. Okay, so this is the equals operator. Okay, and the key was right here, the return this. I want to make sure I get the right little bit of code there. Okay, so I'm going to get back out of here. I'm going to re-enter here. Then I am going to type exactly what I saw. Okay. So the assignment operator returns a reference, a const reference to a shopper. Okay. So now we have to do all of those bits and pieces that we had before, right? So what are those bits and pieces? We had a character array, last name. So we need to do an str and cpy on that. We are copying from, we're copying into last name, the local, this object's last name from RHS dot last name. And we want to copy no more than max name length characters. We want to set valued shopper equal to the right-hand sides valued shopper. We want num items to be equal to the right-hand sides num items. Oh, and then I got to copy over the items themselves. So I'm going to need an integer to do that, because I'm going to need a for loop down here for I equals 0, I less than num items. Remember, I just set num items here, so I can use it here. I plus plus. And so cart sub I is equal to the right-hand side's cart sub I. So that's going to copy over all of our items one by one. And there's our syntactic sugar for returning the const reference to the object. If I've done all that correctly, which I think I have, we have an assignment operator overload. Okay. The next thing I need is the OStream operator overload. So again, I'm going to go over and look at what I did a couple of lectures ago. I've got an operators, an stream insertion operator overload. That was OStream reference for the operator, stream insertion operator, the OStream reference out is the first parameter, and then a const shopper ampersand obj for that one. I'm going to need that int I, okay, because I'm going to need a for loop in here. And then I've got to decide how I want to output this. So I'm going to output last name, like that. Then I'm going to output actually, I think I'm going to do so if they're a valued shopper, I'm going to output so if they're a valued shopper, I want to print that out in my output. And if they're not, I also want to print that out. You want to know who your valued shoppers are. Maybe they get a discount. Maybe they get treated a little better. Who knows, right? So this is going to output their last name, and then a space is space. And then the rest of it is determined on whether or not they're a valued shopper. We're going to output a valued shopper or not a valued shopper. Okay. And then I'm going to have another output. So cart contains items. And then for I equals 0, And actually, the more I think about it, contains space quote like that. So it's going to tell me how many items are in the cart. I less than items. I plus plus. Out. So that out stream is whatever stream we're using. That could be a file. It could be the C out. Doesn't matter. This will work for either one. And so I'm going to output then a tab. And then the cart item. And then an end of line. So that's going to give me the contents of the cart. And then the last thing I need to do is return the stream. So out is the stream, and that's that. Similarly, iStream, ampersand, operator, stream extraction, takes an iStream reference called in, and a const shopper ampersand obj. And so I want to check my textbook. Remember, I'm using another textbook for the references for this stuff. Oh, actually, looking at my reference, it told me that that is not a const, which actually makes sense. I should have thought about it for a second. If you're going to alter the contents of the object, then you really can't have that be a const. So I'm going to go over to appdata.h and change that as well while I'm thinking about it. And so that's in here, right here. Okay. So here we are, back to our operator overload. Now, this is how the input file is formatted. So if we look at the programming assignment, it says that it's last name and then a 0 or a 1, and then the number of items, and then each item 1 per line. Okay, so that's exactly how we're going to lay this out. I'm going to need an int I for a for loop to read in the items. And actually, I need another int as well. I'm going to call that one flag, and that's going to be my 0 or 1. That's going to tell me whether I should set or set the valued customer to either a true or a false. Okay. So I want to extract from in the last name. That's going to be obj dot last name. Obj dot last name. And then in, what was the second thing in here? The second thing was the flag. So I'm going to call that flag. And then I'm going to immediately say if flag equals 0, so if the flag is 0, I'm going to set the valued shopper to false. Otherwise, I'm going to set that valued shopper to true. Then I'm going to input num items. And I'm going to put in a couple of blank lines here just to make things a little easier to read. And then for I equals 0, I less than num items, I plus plus. I'm going to extract cart sub I. Up. And then we're going to return the input stream. I'm reasonably happy with that, at least for the time being. What else do I need in here? I need my setters. Whoop. It's got to be scoped by shopper. And so here's a little different thing that we're going to do now with these setters. I have no control over the length of name that's coming in. So if strlen of name is greater than max name length, okay, so I'm going to change these and make these ints. And in fact, I'm just going to return 1. So that means an error occurred. 1 means you gave me a string that was too long. Otherwise, I don't need the else because I have the return in there. Otherwise, I'm just going to do an strncpy of last name from name with no more than max name length characters being copied. And then just like main is an int, and we have a return value that says yes, an error occurred, or no, it did not, we're going to do the same thing in our setters. Okay. And so now I want to go over to appdata.h and make that change as well. Too many windows open. And just for consistency, I'm going to make every one of these an int. Okay. And they're just going to return whether or not our setter found an error. Okay. Now there really isn't anything to check on setting the valued shopper. And so there's no potential error here. I'm just going to set valued shopper equal to valued. And then I'm going to return a 0 saying, nope, no error occurred. Because the bool only can be true and false, and the valued shopper can only be true and false, there are no invalid values. Okay. Int set cart, which has an int num, and then int contents. Same idea here. We're going to range check this. This one is going to have an else. Because they can't have a 0 or negative number of items either. And so I'm going to return a different code for that. That's going to be a -1. So if the return value is positive, if the return value is true and it's positive, then we exceeded the max number of items. If it's negative, we had too few items. And if it's a 0, then everything was good. Okay. If the number of items is valid, then I equals 0, I less than num. Oh, wait, I've got to set num items here. Num items is equal to num. You know, this is overkill, but I'm going to put that into the if statement here, or into the else of the if statements. I think it makes it a little clearer what's going on here. Now I could also do a check in here. and I probably should. If contents sub I is less than or contents sub I is greater than so that is if the item number is outside of the specified range in the assignment. I'm going to return a third code, and this one is just going to be, let's see, I guess I'll return 2. There we go. And that's a lot of error checking. But this is the power that object-oriented programming gives you, the ability to check all of these things before they can cause problems in your code, okay? So there's our set cart. And I have ooh, I forgot my scoping operators up here. So I need a shopper there. And I need a shopper there. Okay, that all looks good. So down here, shopper there, get last name. Now, obviously this one, I'm just going to put a note to myself in that one that isn't the code that we need. Inside of the shopper class, we have get num items. That's another one of those one-liners. And then we have a const int pointer, get cart. And that's my timer saying that I have burned through 50 minutes of lecture. So I'm going to finish up get cart here. This again is we do later. But for now, I'm going to return a three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17, 18, 19, 20. So I'm going to just return what should be a static array of all zeros. And that is that for now. Do not wait for the rest of the lectures. Start writing your Q class, both the specification and the implementation. You can write the app data specification. We've got that set. You can start writing the app data implementation, which we're working on in here right now. And you can start writing your application program. At first, the only thing it should do is allocate a queue and a local variable that is of type app data, and return 0, and that's it. 3 lines of code in your int main, and that will check the ability to define stacks, or excuse me, queues, and to define variables of type app data. So that is that. I'm going to stop the share and stop recording. And so we'll be back again on Wednesday, and we'll do a lot more coding.